Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we're taking a look at 5 Torches Deep, which is a very interesting rule set designed to get at a halfway point between 5th edition D&D and old school D&D. So it can be a really good conversion point. If you have a group of players who really love 5e and are unwilling to try and switch rule sets to do OSR stuff, this can be a great way to convert them because it uses most of the concepts that they're familiar with, but then adds modules and tweaks to make it much more hardcore in the sense of being more deadly, but also requiring more planning and increasing the danger and the thrill of being in a deadly place where you could actually die. So let's look at the ways that it does that. This was created by Ben Dutter and Jessica Dutter. The graphic design was done by Sam Melly, and in the interest of full disclosure, I was a design consultant on this. Ben Dutter emailed me and sent me some early drafts, and I made some comments on them. So let's look at what we have here. So I love that it starts off with a quick primer as to what this book is and how it differs from 5th edition, how it differs from old school D&D. So just by reading this, you can get a quick overview of what you're in for. Very few RPGs do this, and it is great, and I love it. So simple things like danger is real, cunning over crunch, magic is haphazard, your PCs are weaker, the default difficulty class is 11, although it can be changed, all the stats are useful, and we have our basic core mechanic. It's a simple D20 system because the system itself has not been changed dramatically from 5th edition. It's just been tweaked a little bit. You still have advantage and disadvantage, and normally you're trying to get an 11. And we have an example of play right at the beginning. Some really cool art here. Player characters. They look a little bit like 5th edition characters in that they feel a bit more high fantasy than a typical OSR group would, but then it's toned down to be grittier and grimier. So I think that art hits that midpoint pretty well too. We have the character basics here. You have 4 basic races: humans, dwarves, elves, and halflings. And because this is designed to be more old school, you are rolling your stats. The main difference here is that if you're one of the non-human types, then you are rolling 2d6 plus 3 for certain of your stats, and a couple of the other ones are set for a certain amount. The ones that you're good at in general. Whereas humans roll 3d6 in order. These also have class restrictions, so you have to roll good enough, in the case of a dwarf. To be a thief, you have to have at least 13 dexterity. To be a mage, you have to have at least 13 intelligence. Ability scores work just like in 5th edition, and levels only go up to 9, because you're not becoming gods here, you're just becoming very capable adventurers. And here we have a breakdown of the classes. So this is what makes 5 Torches Deep really stand out, I think. You have your 9 levels here. Your proficiency bonus starts at 2 and goes up to 4, so it doesn't go as high as 5th edition. And the main thing is that although you have 4 classes, warrior, thief, zealot, and mage, each of those is broken down into 3 archetypes. So basically by choosing an archetype, you can specialize into being a barbarian, fighter, or ranger. Thieves can be assassins, bards, or rogues. If you're a zealot, basically a cleric, you can be a cleric, druid, or a paladin, and a mage can be a sorcerer, warlock, or a wizard. The idea here is that by the time you get to at certain levels, so for example, at level 3, you gain 1 feature from that archetype. So you choose an archetype and you start taking one of these features. Each of them has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6. Some of them have 7, just different little options that make them flavored to be more like that thing, a warlock or sorcerer or a wizard. So just by choosing those, you can end up feeling more like that archetype. But no 2 wizards are going to be exactly the same because no 2 wizards are going to pick the exact same bonuses here. We have some basics here, including the starting hit points, what armor they can wear, basic starting mage equipment, and so on. Moving on to our equipment section. Armor and shields, weapons, example weapons. It has an encumbrance system, which is really great. 5e has encumbrance, but no one uses it. And so this uses a very simple load system based on your strength. So An item that weighs about 5 pounds counts as 1 load. Carrying load over your strength causes you to be encumbered, which reduces your speed. And every point of load over your strength forces disadvantage on all checks. So you really don't want to go over your encumbrance. Although you can if you want. That would be kind of a risk-reward thing. Do I want to carry all this extra treasure at the cost of being encumbered? We have another fun system here called supply. Basically what this does is if you bring a bunch of supplies, say torches, for example, you can also choose to just bring a nebulous thing called supply with you, and it weighs a certain amount, so it takes up your inventory. And then when you run out of certain types of items, you can spend points of supply to just say you have more copies of that item. Now, it is very clear to point out here that it says supply can't create new things while adventuring. It can only replenish or replace spent, consumed, or lost things. Supply only works for items that the PC started that were brought prior to the start of the adventure. So it's not quantum equipment is the important point here. You can't just say I'm spending a supply and boom, I have this new item that you didn't know I had before. That is not how this works. It just allows you to abstract a bit your equipping phase of the game. I think that's good middle ground. Although people may want to not use that depending on how hardcore they want to play this. We have rules for foraging, rules for durability and sundering weapons. All of these rules are extremely modular, which I really love. They don't interact too much with other aspects of the game, so you really can pull out or plop in these different chunks of rules depending on what you or the flavor that you want for your game. A lot of these could simply be pulled out and dropped right into a 5e game, which is really cool. We have a section on gameplay itself. Saves and checks, PC actions, you have movement, you have normal attacks, how your positioning works. None of it is too surprising, but it does give a nice clear rundown. I should also praise the fact that this is very much focused on efficient layout. Any topic is 1 page or a 2-page spread, very intentionally, to reduce the amount of flipping. This also makes it work more like a control panel, and it almost works like a DM screen. You could print out some of these pages and slide them into a DM screen, and they would just work like an overview of the game. That's a little bit like how I designed Maze Rats, and I think it's a really helpful way to lay out a game. We have a system for morale here, traps, treasure. You got to have morale if you're having any kind of game where tactics are going to be important, because you should be able to terrify your enemies. We have travel turns, which is a great way of doing the dungeon exploration turn that you see in traditional D&D, where every hour that goes by, you roll a d20, and this tells you how bad things are. So something really horrible could happen, something bad is going to happen very soon, a threat is drawing near, or nothing bad happens. That's only on a 1 in 20 chance. Generally, things are getting worse the longer that you hang out in a dungeon or in a dangerous environment. And that's good, because you want to push players to keep moving and to be aware of their surroundings. Rules for overland travel. Rolling to return is a fun little rule that I've never seen before. Basically, it's a rule to help you figure out how to get out of the dungeon. So if you are deep into the dungeon and you have to cut your game short, or maybe you just don't want to do the whole trek back again, you can abstract this. But the more dangerous the location that you're in, the higher the odds are that you're going to take damage on your way out. We have systems for light, systems for chases, retreating, resilience and exhaustion, taking corruption, and we have a section on magic. So working with spells here, the main change for spell casting, at least in this rule set, is that casting a spell does not immediately lose it. You do a roll in order to see if the spell works or not. So failing that roll triggers a mishap with unintended consequences, and the spellcaster can't attempt spells of that spell level again until they take a safe rest. The GM can require a d20 roll on the magic mishap table, or simply describe what malady the PC suffers. So we have a bunch of cool mishaps that can happen here. Makes spellcasting a bit more dangerous. We have our spell list here. Here's our arcane spell list. They only go from cantrips up to 5th level, and each of them has 5 different spells. So the spell list is definitely shorter than 5th edition. It's much more, it's tighter, although it does cover most of the main archetypes of magic that a wizard would use. Same thing with divine spells. Goes up to 5th level, and it has most of the archetypal cleric magic. The system for retainers is right here, and giving them orders and building up renown for yourself. We also have monsters, and I like the monster system here, basically because how transparent it is. That's the word I'm looking for. So it has a monster math table here, where basically it breaks down how it expects the math of a given monster to work out. So that when you're creating your own monsters, it's very easy to ballpark how tough they are. You have basic monster categories. This reminds me of 4th edition a little bit, where you have brutes, leaders, predators, shapers, snipers, and soldiers. And you have basic techniques that monsters might have, like blasts, bursts, force a condition to happen. They can shove people, and different tactics they might have. So by snapping some of these things together, you can put together an archetype of a monster pretty quickly. That's really nice. It's definitely thinking about what is going to be easiest for a DM. Here's our actual system for building monsters here. Come up with a concept, figure out its threat, so its hit dice and danger level, what category it fits into, techniques, and the monster math, what hit points and AC it should probably have. And of course, you can tweak that. But here's a bunch of examples here where you have a jungle cat, 1 HD predator, the techniques it might have, and if it's a strong one, if it's a weak one, etc., how that math would change. Some basic outline for running the game here. So a lot of games are very vague and indecisive when it comes to telling you how the game should be run. But something that I think a lot of indie RPGs and a lot of OSR games have in common is that they are much clearer about what you should be doing. So, or what the principles ought to be in the view of the author. So giving players a fair challenge, impact and ingenuity, give them meaningful choices, internal consistency to the world. You need that if the players are going to do any planning. The importance of discovery in adventuring, right? Discovering things should be fun. It should be meaningful. And we have a generator at the back here, allowing to build up connections between things and describing things. And then this caused a bit of a stir when this leaked out into the internet. You can create random maps by using a Rubik's Cube, which is really fun. Although here it's not called a Rubik's Cube because that's copyrighted. So you have a Rubik's Cube, you scramble it up, you roll it like a D6, and the arrangement of the colors on one face can give you at least inspiration for how to lay out a dungeon. And there's an example here of how you would actually do that. And at the back, this is wonderful, quick reference. So it has all of the important things that you need to know, all laid out on a 2-page spread. So you can just go through, read these 2 pages, and you have basically the whole book summarized. Going to be much easier to run the game when you can just look straight at this and you don't have to flip through several pages of text. These types of things tend to be written by fans rather than being written by the actual book publisher. So it's really great to see that in the book for a change. And we have a character sheet at the back. So as always, links will be down in the description below if you want to check out where you can get 5 Torches Deep for yourself. A great transitional game for going between 5e and old school D&D. And even if you don't want to do that, lots of rules here that you can yank out and plop into either type of game, OSR or 5e, in order to modify the game to add different types of rules that are very easy to use, very easy to understand, and quickly add a type of flavor or a type of challenge that you want the players to focus on. So that's it for today. Check out the links down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.